The Krell Empire had conquered exactly 1,047 worlds before they made the mistake of adding Earth to their list. To be fair, they had no reason to expect anything different. Their standard operating procedure had worked flawlessly for 3 centuries. Show up, look intimidating, deliver the surrender speech, accept capitulation, move on, rinse and repeat across the galaxy. Supreme Warmaster Vex'thor stood on the bridge of his flagship, all 7 feet of reptilian superiority wrapped in ceremonial armor that cost more than a small planet. His scales gleamed purple in the light of Earth's sun, and his triple-jointed arms gestured dramatically as he prepared for another routine conquest. "Scan complete, Warmaster," announced his tactical officer. "The primitive settlement appears to be a military installation, minimal defenses, projectile weapons only. No energy shields detected." Vex'thor's mandibles clicked in amusement. Projectile weapons. How quaint. The last species using those had been conquered when his grandfather was still in the military academy. "Excellent. Deploy landing craft to Grid 773. We shall accept their surrender before the midday meal." The Krell invasion force descended on Forward Operating Base Sandstorm with all the subtlety of a meteor strike. 6 landing craft, each carrying 50 shock troopers in full combat exoskeletons, touched down in a perfect hexagonal formation around the small base. Dust clouds billowed, ramps lowered with hydraulic hisses, and Vex'thor himself strode forward to deliver the speech. He had given the speech 1,047 times. He had it memorized in 6 languages and could do it in his sleep. The dramatic pauses were perfectly timed. The threats were calibrated for maximum psychological impact. The offer of mercy if they surrendered immediately always sounded magnanimous, yet menacing. Staff Sergeant Rita Kowalski watched this entire performance from the base command center while drinking coffee that could strip paint. She was 42 years old, had 3 tours in actual war zones under her belt, and had exactly 0 patience for theatrical nonsense before she had finished her morning caffeine. "Is this guy serious right now?" she asked nobody in particular. "Ma'am, I think he's threatening to vaporize us," said Corporal Lee, who was manning the communication station and trying very hard not to laugh. On the screen, Vex'thor had reached the crescendo of the speech, his voice booming across the desert. "Surrender now, primitive creatures, and the Krell Empire shall grant you the mercy of servitude. Resist and face annihilation." Rita took another sip of coffee. She had paperwork to file, 3 broken generators that needed fixing, and a suspicious smell coming from the mess hall that she really needed to investigate. She did not have time for whatever this was. She clicked the base-wide intercom. "Attention all personnel. We have hostile aliens outside making demands. Standard protocol applies. Do not fire unless fired upon. Try not to start an intergalactic incident. And somebody please tell them we don't do surrendering before breakfast. Kowalski out." Vex'thor waited for the inevitable response. Usually it was groveling. Sometimes it was defiance, which was adorable and quickly crushed. Once, memorably, it had been an attempt at negotiation, which had also been adorable and quickly crushed. What he got instead was a human voice, female, sounding deeply inconvenienced. "Yeah, hi. This is Staff Sergeant Kowalski. Listen, we're kind of busy right now, and honestly, your timing is terrible. If you want to file a formal invasion request, you'll need to go through the proper channels. I can give you the number for Central Command if you want." Vex'thor's mandibles hung open. In 3 centuries of conquest, nobody had ever told him to call a different number. This is not a negotiation, primitive. This is surrender or death. "Right, okay, got it. Super serious. Still gonna need you to talk to my chain of command, though. I'm not authorized to surrender an entire planet. That's way above my pay grade." Vex'thor made a gesture to his troops, the universal sign for just shoot something to show we are serious. That was when they met Private First Class Danny Torres and his shovel. Danny Torres was having the kind of morning that made him question his life choices. He had joined the Marines for adventure, honor, and the educational benefits. Instead, he was currently 3 feet deep in a hole, digging a new latrine because the old one had decided to stage a biological rebellion in the middle of the night. The entrenching tool in his hands, officially called an E-tool, and affectionately nicknamed the shovel that does everything, was caked with dirt. His uniform was soaked with sweat. The sun was trying to murder him, and he had just heard something on the base intercom about aliens, which he assumed was Kowalski messing with everyone again. Then a Krell shock trooper rounded the corner of the supply building and nearly stepped on his hole. Danny looked up at 7 feet of alien warrior in powered armor bristling with weapons. The Krell looked down at a scrawny human covered in dirt holding a tiny shovel. For exactly 3 seconds, neither of them moved. The Krell raised his plasma rifle, which was his first mistake. His second mistake was assuming the human would run. His third and final mistake was not accounting for the fact that Danny Torres had been digging in 100-degree heat for 2 hours and was not in the mood. Danny came out of that hole like a jack-in-the-box designed by the military-industrial complex. The E-tool caught the Krell right under the chin, where the armor plating had a gap for head mobility. The alien's helmet rang like a bell. He staggered backward, and Danny followed up with a strike that would have made his drill instructor weep with pride, catching the Krell across the knee joint. Krell armor was designed to deflect energy weapons and resist projectiles. It was not designed for some maniac with a shovel treating it like a piñata. The knee joint buckled. The alien went down. And Danny, operating on pure adrenaline and irritation, proceeded to demonstrate why entrenching tools had been standard military issue since before humans invented airplanes. 3 more Krell rounded the corner, drawn by their comrade's distress call. They found Torres standing over their unconscious squad mate, shovel raised, looking like the world's angriest landscaper. "Stay back. I have a shovel and I am not afraid to use it again." To their credit, the Krell shock troopers had conquered dozens of species. They had faced energy weapons, biological horrors, and one memorable incident involving sentient crystals that screamed. But none of their training had prepared them for a human with a shovel and absolutely no fear whatsoever. The first trooper fired a warning shot. The plasma bolt scorched the ground near Danny's feet. Danny responded by throwing a shovelful of dirt directly at the alien's face, because when you are already committed to the insanity, you might as well go all in. The dirt hit the Krell's helmet sensors, temporarily blinding him. His return fire went wild. One blast hit the supply building. Another hit his own squad mate. The third hit absolutely nothing, unless you counted the morale of the Krell Empire. Danny charged. It was the kind of charge that military historians would later describe as tactically inadvisable but undeniably effective. The kind of charge that happened when a human brain decided that rational thought was overrated and violence was the answer. The shovel connected with the first Krell's rifle, knocking it aside. A follow-up strike hit his chest plate hard enough to dent it. The alien stumbled backward into his squad mates, and suddenly all 4 Krell were tangled in a pile of high-tech armor and wounded pride. By the time Sergeant Kowalski arrived with reinforcements, Danny was sitting on top of the pile, shovel held like a sword, breathing hard and looking mildly surprised that he was still alive. "Torres, what the hell happened here?" "Sergeant, they interrupted my latrine dig." Kowalski looked at the 4 Krell shock troopers, all incapacitated, all groaning in pain, all defeated by one Marine with a shovel. She looked at Torres, who was now casually leaning on his E-tool like it was a cane. "Did you just win a fight against alien soldiers with a shovel?" "In my defense, Sergeant, it's a really good shovel." 17 different helmet cameras had captured the entire incident. By the time the sun set on Fob Sandstorm, every Krell soldier in the invasion force had watched Private Torres and his shovel. The video became the most downloaded file in Krell military history, though not for the reasons anyone wanted. Vex'thor watched the footage 3 times, each viewing making his scales darken with a deeper shade of humiliated purple. "This is not possible," he whispered. "We are the Krell Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have weapons that can crack planets. And we were defeated by a gardening implement?" His tactical officer wisely remained silent. "Get me Sub-Commander Click, immediately. We need intelligence on these creatures before this gets any worse." Narrator's note: it was definitely going to get worse. Sub-Commander Click was the kind of officer who actually read reports before launching invasions. This made her unusual in the Krell military, where most commanders preferred the overwhelming force first, questions later approach. She had been against invading Earth from the beginning, but nobody had asked her opinion until after the shovel incident made it mandatory. She stood before Vex'thor in the briefing room, her tablet loaded with 3 days' worth of research that she had desperately compiled after watching Torres' performance. Her scales were pale green with stress, which was the Krell equivalent of having a nervous breakdown in slow motion. Warmaster, I need to present my findings about the humans. Make it quick, Sub-Commander. I want to launch the next assault within the hour. Sir, with all due respect, that would be catastrophic. We need to abort this invasion immediately. Vex'thor's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Abort? Because of one incident with one primitive soldier? I think not. Click pulled up her first slide. It showed a human running, just running. For context, she had added the timestamp, 6 hours continuous. Warmaster, humans are persistence hunters. They can run for hours without stopping. They evolved chasing prey until it literally died of exhaustion. Their homeworld tried to kill them with heat, cold, predators, diseases, and they just kept going. They are biologically designed to not know when to quit. They are soft creatures with no natural armor or weapons. Yes, sir. They compensated by becoming the galaxy's most aggressive tool users. That shovel Torres used? It is a standard issue item that every human soldier carries. They have weaponized gardening equipment as standard protocol. Vex'thor waved dismissively. What else? Click's hands trembled as she pulled up the next slide. A picture of a human eating something called a ghost pepper. Sir, humans consume poison for recreation. They call it spicy food. They have a chemical in their brains called capsaicin receptors that create pain, and they enjoy it. They seek it out. They have competitions to see who can endure the most pain from eating. That is illogical. It gets worse, sir. Humans keep apex predators as pets. They domesticated wolves, which are pack-hunting carnivores, and bred them into creatures they call dogs. They keep them in their homes. Some humans keep reptiles that could kill them. Some keep insects. One human we observed has a bird that screams profanity. Vex'thor shifted uncomfortably. Surely they cannot be that dangerous if they befriend predators. That's not befriending, sir. That's dominance. They made predators love them. And then there's this. She pulled up a medical scan. Humans have a chemical called adrenaline. When threatened, their bodies flood with it. Heart rate increases, pain tolerance skyrockets, strength temporarily doubles. They become essentially berserkers. Torres was operating under adrenaline influence during the shovel incident. He probably doesn't even remember half of what he did. One chemical cannot make such a difference. Sir, I have 73 documented cases of humans performing impossible physical feats under adrenaline, lifting vehicles to save trapped individuals, fighting off multiple attackers, surviving injuries that should be fatal. There is one case of a human mother lifting a 2-ton object off her child. 2 tons, sir. Vex'thor was quiet for a moment. What about their military capabilities? Surely their technology is primitive. Click laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had seen things that could not be unseen. Their technology is primitive, yes. But that makes them more dangerous, not less. They still use kinetic weapons, chemical propellants, and explosive devices. Technology we abandoned centuries ago because it was too crude. But crude works, sir. Our shields are designed for energy weapons. Our armor is calibrated for plasma and particle beams. Nobody in the galaxy uses bullets anymore except humans. Bullets. Metal projectiles fired at supersonic speeds. Their rifles can penetrate our standard armor at range. Their tanks fire shells the size of my arm. And they have something called artillery that can bombard targets from kilometers away with explosive rounds. We have no defense protocols for any of this because nobody has used these weapons in 300 years. Vex'thor's purple scales were fading to a sickly lavender. Continue. Their military culture is based on improvisation and aggression. Where we follow doctrine and establish tactics, they encourage individual initiative and creative problem-solving. Their training is designed to break them down and rebuild them as soldiers who do not surrender and do not know fear. They have a saying, adapt and overcome. All species have martial traditions. Not like this, sir. Most species fight for resources or territory. Humans fight for pride, for honor, for their fellow soldiers, for abstract concepts like freedom and democracy. They will die for a flag. They have something called esprit de corps, which makes them fight harder when their comrades are threatened. And sir, they do not have a concept of acceptable losses. They will risk everything to recover their wounded and dead. Every human is valuable to them. Click pulled up her final slide. It was a simple graph showing human conflicts throughout their history. Sir, humans have been at war with themselves for their entire recorded history. They have fought with sticks, stones, swords, guns, bombs, chemical weapons, and nuclear devices. They have killed billions of their own species, and they are still here. They are unkillable, sir. We have never faced a species that considers warfare their natural state. Vex'thor stared at the presentation. For the first time in his military career, doubt crept into his mind. What do you recommend, Sub-Commander? Immediate withdrawal. Mark this system as interdicted space. File a report with the Empire Council recommending humanity be left alone until they either destroy themselves or develop faster than light travel and become someone else's problem. That is cowardice. No, sir, that is wisdom. We have conquered 1,000 worlds because we chose our battles carefully. This is not a battle we can win, and the shovel incident proves it. One human with basic equipment defeated 4 of our best shock troopers. What happens when we face thousands of them with their primitive but effective weapons? What happens when they start capturing our technology and reverse engineering it? Sir, humans are the galaxy's most dangerous species specifically because they are too stupid to know when they are outmatched. Vex'thor stood silent for a long moment. Then his mandibles clicked with determination. No, I will not be remembered as the Warmaster who retreated from primitives. Deploy the war mechs. We will crush them with overwhelming force. Click's scales went white. Sir, please reconsider. Dismissed, Sub-Commander, and do not question my orders again. As Click left the briefing room, she made a private note to request a transfer, preferably to somewhere far away from Earth. Maybe that nice quiet sector near the Galactic rim where nothing ever happened. Behind her, Vex'thor began planning humanity's defeat. What he did not know was that the Marines had been planning too, and their plans involved significantly more duct tape and creativity than his. The Krell Warmechs were 40 feet of technological superiority, armed with plasma cannons, missile pods, and energy shields that could deflect anything short of a supernova. They had crushed fortified positions on 100 worlds. They were, in the professional military opinion of Sergeant Kowalski, absolutely ridiculous looking. They looked like they walked out of a bad anime, she said, watching the mechs deploy through binoculars. Torres, you seeing this? Danny, who had been promoted to guy who hit aliens with a shovel and was now being consulted on tactical matters, nodded. Yes, Sergeant. Big robots. Definitely big robots. Think the shovel will work on them? I think we need a bigger shovel. The Krell attack began with their standard doctrine. Overwhelming firepower from range, followed by mech advance, followed by shock trooper cleanup. It should have worked. The textbook said it would work. Vex'thor's 3 centuries of experience said it would work. They had not accounted for the fact that Marines don't read Krell textbooks. The first plasma barrage hit the base perimeter, which had been hastily reinforced with sandbags, concrete barriers, and a suspicious amount of scrap metal that definitely wasn't supposed to be there. The explosions were impressive. The casualties were 0 because every Marine had already relocated to secondary positions that Kowalski had set up using a combination of military doctrine and pure spite. Return fire! Light them up! Kowalski barked into the radio. The base's defensive weapons opened up, and the Krell got their first taste of humanity's primitive warfare. Machine guns that fired 600 rounds per minute, grenade launchers that lobbed explosive shells in high arcs, and one absolutely beautiful M1 Abrams tank crewed by Corporal Jimmy Martinez and his team, who had named their vehicle Bad Idea and lived up to it daily. The Krell energy shields deflected the first few bursts of machine gun fire, exactly as designed. Then the sheer volume of bullets started to overwhelm the shield generators. Krell shields were calibrated for occasional energy weapon hits, not continuous streams of metal moving at supersonic speeds. It was like trying to stop a river with a tennis racket. One mech's shields flickered and died. Martinez saw his opportunity. Gunner, sabot round, mech left. Bad Idea's main gun fired with a sound like the universe clearing its throat. The depleted uranium round, traveling at over a mile per second, hit the unshielded mech center mass. The round went in one side and out the other, because physics doesn't care about your technological superiority. The mech toppled like a cut tree. The Krell pilot ejected, screaming something in his native language that the universal translators wisely refused to interpret. "Did that just work?" Martinez's gunner asked. "It definitely just worked. Load another round." Vex'thor watched from his command ship in orbit, his mandibles clicking in confusion. "How are they penetrating our shields?" "Sir, they are using kinetic weapons," his tactical officer reported. "The shields cannot handle the volume of projectiles. It is like being hit by thousands of small asteroids simultaneously. Then activate close-range defenses and advance. Crush them." The war mechs moved forward, their point defense systems now active, shooting down incoming bullets with lasers. It was effective, impressive, and exactly what Kowalski wanted them to do. "Now," she shouted. What the Krell didn't know was that humans had invented something called combined arms tactics approximately 6,000 years ago, and had gotten really good at it. While the mechs were focused on the bullets, they weren't paying attention to other threats, like rocket-propelled grenades fired from unexpected angles, like mines buried in the sand, like one absolutely insane Marine named Corporal Davis who had somehow gotten on top of a building with a satchel full of thermite grenades and a death wish. Davis jumped. He actually jumped onto a moving war mech, because apparently nobody had told him that was impossible. The thermite grenade went down an exhaust port, because war mechs needed to vent heat and engineers rarely planned for suicidal humans with explosives. The mech's interior temperature went from comfortable to surface of the sun in 3 seconds. The pilot ejected. The mech took 5 more steps and then collapsed. Its internal systems melted into expensive slag. "Did Davis just kill a giant robot by jumping on it?" Torres asked, watching through a scope. "He absolutely did. Someone write him up for a medal, or a psych eval, maybe both." The Krell advance stalled, not because they were losing, but because they had no idea what to do. Their doctrine had no answers for enemy jumps on you with fire. Then the Krell made their second critical error of the day. They tried to jam human communications, using their advanced electronic warfare systems. In theory, it should have worked. In practice, they jammed every radio frequency the humans were using. What they didn't jam was Private Lee's solution to the problem, which was to plug his phone into the base PA system and play death metal at volume 11 directly at the Krell forces on an open channel. The Krell's audio sensors, designed to pick up tactical communications, instead got 3 minutes of aggressive guitar solos and Cookie Monster vocals. Several Krell soldiers removed their helmets just to make it stop. This made them vulnerable to the one thing they had been protected from: more bullets. Martinez laughed so hard he nearly missed his next shot. "Are we winning a battle with Slayer?" "Seems like it," his gunner confirmed, loading another round. The Krell began a tactical withdrawal, which was military speak for running away but with more dignity. The war mechs fell back under covering fire, leaving 2 of their number burning in the sand. The shock troopers retreated in disorder, and Vex'thor watched his perfect battle plan collapse into chaos. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We are the Krell Empire." "Sir," his tactical officer said carefully, "perhaps Sub-Commander Click was correct. Perhaps we should withdraw." "No, no! I will not be defeated by primitives with projectile weapons and loud noise. Prepare my personal dreadnought for atmospheric entry. I will end this myself." In the command center at FOB Sandstorm, Kowalski watched the Krell ships repositioning in orbit. She had been a Marine long enough to recognize when someone was about to do something stupid and dramatic. "All right, people, listen up. Looks like they're sending something big. Torres, you still got that shovel?" Danny hefted his E-tool, which had gained several new dents but remained functional. "Yes, Sergeant." "Outstanding. You might need it." Vex'thor's personal dreadnought was a monument to military excess. It bristled with enough weapons to level a city, had shields that could withstand sustained bombardment, and was painted in the ceremonial purple of the Warmaster's office. It was designed to inspire fear and awe in equal measure. To the Marines watching it descend through the atmosphere, it looked like a flying building having a midlife crisis. "That thing is huge," Torres observed. Yeah, but remember, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, Kowalski replied. And we are definitely going to make it fall. The dreadnought settled into position 2 miles from the base, hovering on anti-gravity generators that distorted the air around it. Vex'thor's voice boomed across the desert, amplified by speakers that could be heard from orbit. Humans, you have proven more resilient than anticipated, but this ends now. Surrender or be destroyed. I am Supreme Warmaster Vex'thor of the Krell Empire, and I personally guarantee your annihilation. Kowalski grabbed a radio. Yeah, hi. This is Staff Sergeant Kowalski again. Listen, about that annihilation, I'm going to have to decline, but I appreciate the offer. Very professional. You mock me? Me? I have conquered entire star systems. That's great, really impressive resume. But see, we've been using the last 3 days to do some shopping at your supply depot. You know, the one you left unguarded 6 miles east of here. We found some interesting stuff. On the Dreadnought's bridge, a tactical officer checked the sensors. Sir, the supply depot is reporting... Oh no. What? It's gone, sir. The humans took everything. How did they even transport... They stole our technology? Kowalski's voice came back, cheerful and utterly unconcerned. Stole is such a harsh word. We prefer tactically acquired. And you know what we learned? Your energy systems are really well designed, easy to understand, even easier to repurpose. Repurpose? See, here's the thing about Marines. We're trained to improvise, and when you give us alien technology that's better than ours, well, we're going to use it. Martinez, you want to show him? Bad idea rolled into view, but it wasn't the same tank anymore. The Marines had bolted, welded, and duct-taped Krell shield generators to the hull. The main gun had been augmented with a Krell plasma accelerator. The entire vehicle looked like a science experiment designed by caffeinated madmen, which was basically accurate. You cannot possibly have integrated our technology that quickly, Vex'thor said, but his voice carried a note of doubt. You'd be surprised what we can do with duct tape and poor supervision. Fire 1. Bad idea's hybrid gun fired. The round was a standard tank shell wrapped in a Krell plasma field, because someone had asked, what if we made bullets but more dangerous? And nobody had been smart enough to say no. The shot hit the Dreadnought's shields and punched through like they weren't there. Because the shields were calibrated for energy weapons and had no idea what to do with a hypersonic plasma-wrapped kinetic penetrator, the round hit the Dreadnought's lower hull and detonated. Armor plating designed to withstand orbital strikes buckled. Alarms screamed, and Vex'thor realized he had made a terrible mistake. Evasive action, return fire. The Dreadnought's weapons blazed, plasma cannons and missile batteries unleashing enough firepower to level a mountain. The Marines scattered, using cover, mobility, and creative profanity to avoid being vaporized. Several buildings exploded. A fuel depot went up in a fireball that could be seen from space, and through it all the humans kept fighting, because that's what they did. That's what they had always done. When faced with impossible odds, humans didn't surrender. They improvised, adapted, and hit back twice as hard with whatever they had available. Torres found himself sprinting across open ground, plasma bolts scorching the air around him, still carrying his shovel because at this point it felt wrong to put it down. He dove into a crater and found himself face to face with Corporal Davis, who was assembling something that looked suspiciously like a Krell plasma rifle attached to a rocket launcher. Is that safe? Torres asked. Absolutely not. Want to fire it? Yes, please. They took turns shooting the hybrid weapon at the Dreadnought. It misfired twice, nearly exploded once, and successfully hit its target 0 times. But it looked cool and made them feel better, which counted for something. Meanwhile, Martinez had discovered something interesting about Krell dreadnoughts. They had a vulnerable spot, because every military vehicle in the history of warfare had a vulnerable spot, usually in whatever place the engineers had assured everyone would never be targeted. Sergeant, you seeing this? Martinez zoomed in on the dreadnought's underside. That look like a radiator to you? Kowalski squinted at the thermal imaging. That's definitely a cooling system. Why would they put it on the outside? Because nobody's ever gotten close enough to hit it? Until today. Take the shot. Bad idea maneuvered for position, dodging plasma fire and debris. The Krell focused their defensive fire on the tank, recognizing the threat. Shields sparked and failed under the barrage. The tank's armor, a mix of American steel and scavenged Krell plating, held for exactly as long as it needed to. Martinez lined up the shot. Sabot round loaded, firing. The round flew true. It hit the cooling system dead center. Coolant sprayed. Internal temperatures spiked. And the Dreadnought's main reactor did what reactors do when they overheat without proper cooling. It scrammed, initiating an emergency shutdown. The massive vessel dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Anti-gravity failed. Engines died. It hit the ground with an impact that registered on seismographs 3 states away. In the sudden silence, Torres looked at his shovel, then at the crashed Dreadnought, then back at his shovel. I didn't even get to use it this time. There's always next invasion, Davis offered. Vex'thor survived the crash because command crew seats were designed for worst-case scenarios. He emerged from the wreckage to find himself surrounded by humans, all armed, all watching him with expressions ranging from amusement to mild disappointment that the fight was over. Kowalski stepped forward. So, about that surrender demand you made earlier, we're going to have to counteroffer. You surrender to us, we promise not to hit you with shovels, and everybody goes home alive. Deal? Vex'thor looked at the ruins of his dreadnought, at his scattered forces, at the small group of humans who had defeated the Krell Empire's finest with primitive weapons and sheer audacity. His scales faded to a pale, defeated purple. The Krell Empire accepts your terms. Excellent. Torres, put down the shovel. We're accepting their surrender, not conquering their homeworld. Yes, Sergeant. Torres lowered his E-tool reluctantly. It had become his emotional support shovel at this point. 3 weeks later, the Krell Empire held an emergency council meeting. Vex'thor, stripped of his rank and reassigned to waste management duties on a remote station, watched via viewscreen as his failure became official policy. Sub-Commander Click, newly promoted to Supreme Intelligence Director, presented her findings to the Council with the satisfaction of someone who had been right all along and everyone knew it. The human homeworld, designated Earth, is hereby classified as a Level 10 hazard zone. All Krell vessels are prohibited from entering this star system. Any future contact must be approved by the High Council and conducted with extreme caution. The Council members, representing dozens of conquered species, chittered and clicked in agreement. They had all watched the footage from Earth. The shovel incident had become required viewing at the Krell Military Academy as an example of what not to do. What about the technology they captured? One counselor asked. Write it off, Click said flatly. They've already reverse-engineered most of it anyway. Intelligence suggests they'll have functional plasma weapons within 6 months and shield technology within a year. Attempting to recover our equipment would require another invasion force, and I don't think I need to explain why that's inadvisable. What is your assessment of the humans as a potential threat? Click pulled up her final report. Humans are the single most dangerous species we have encountered, not because they are strong or technologically advanced, but because they are adaptable, aggressive, and fundamentally unreasonable. They do not know when to quit. They weaponize everything. They run on spite and caffeine. And most importantly, they have something we don't. What? A sense of humor about warfare. They turned our invasion into entertainment. They named their tank Bad Idea. They defeated our forces with a shovel, duct tape, and death metal music. They are psychologically incompatible with our understanding of conflict. We cannot predict them, we cannot intimidate them, and we absolutely cannot defeat them with conventional military doctrine. The Council absorbed this in silence. Finally, the High Counselor spoke. Your recommendation? Mark humanity as a species to monitor, but not engage. Wait for them to develop faster than light capability, then offer trade relations. They are more useful as allies than enemies. And whatever you do, do not invade their planet. They have 6 billion potential soldiers, and if one Marine with a shovel could defeat our shock troopers, I don't want to know what an army of them could do. The Council voted unanimously. Earth was marked as quarantined space. The Krell Empire, for the first time in 3 centuries, chose not to conquer. Back at FOB Sandstorm, Life had returned to something approaching normal, if you ignored the alien technology being studied in every available building, and the fact that they were now technically the most well-armed forward operating base in human history. Torres was back to digging, though now he had a crew of engineers following him around, asking about the shovel's tactical applications. His E-tool had been requisitioned by the Smithsonian, though he'd been promised a replacement and a formal commendation. Martinez and Bad Idea had been featured in every military publication, though the photos carefully avoided showing the jury-rigged alien technology bolted to the tank. DARPA had questions, so did Congress. Martinez's response to both was, no comment, but it was definitely cool. Kowalski sat in her office, looking at the paperwork that came with defeating an alien invasion. Equipment damage reports, casualty reports, which thankfully only listed injuries. After-action reports that nobody would believe, and one peculiar form labeled Alien Technology Acquisition Report that apparently she was now required to fill out. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, signing her name for the 40th time. "Sergeant?" Torres appeared in the doorway. "Got a minute?" "Sure, Torres. What's up?" "Just wanted to say thanks. For not surrendering, I mean. And for letting me keep fighting even after the whole shovel thing probably should have gotten me sent for a psychological evaluation." Kowalski smiled. "Torres, you single-handedly started an intergalactic incident with a piece of basic equipment. In any SAN military, that would be a court-martial. In the Marines, that's a Tuesday. You did good, kid. Think they'll come back?" "The Krell? No. We scared them too badly. But others might hear about what happened here. And when they do, they'll either stay away or come looking for a fight. Either way, we'll be ready." Torres nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "Sergeant, do you think I can get my shovel back from the Smithsonian?" "I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, Supply has a whole box of E-tools with your name on them. Literally. Someone stenciled Torres's shovel collection on the side." After Torres left, Kowalski returned to her paperwork. The last form was a damage assessment report for the alien dreadnought still sitting 2 miles from the base. Apparently, it was now considered U.S. government property by right of conquest, and someone in Washington wanted to know if it was salvageable. She wrote one word in the assessment box. "Yes." Then she added a note. "Recommend keeping as permanent base defense installation. Also recommend not telling Torres we have a giant alien spaceship. He will absolutely try to hit it with a shovel to see what happens." Across the galaxy, the Krell Empire updated their military database. The entry for Earth was comprehensive, detailed, and marked with warnings in 6 languages, but the summary was simple enough for any species to understand. Humanity, classification, Death World species, category, do not engage. Warning, humans utilize primitive kinetic weapons, improvised tactics, and psychological warfare. Standard doctrine ineffective. Shields vulnerable to sustained projectile fire. Do not underestimate based on technology level. Do not interrupt their work. Do not threaten their personnel. Under no circumstances engage in ground combat. Species has weaponized. Gardening tools, adhesive tape, musical entertainment, and sheer stubbornness. Recommended policy. Avoidance. If contact unavoidable, be polite, be professional, have an exit strategy. At the bottom of the entry, someone had added an unofficial note that kept getting deleted by administrators and kept reappearing. "They beat us with a shovel, never forget, never return." In the mess hall at FOB Sandstorm, the Marines celebrated their victory the way Marines always celebrated, with bad coffee, worse jokes, and increasingly elaborate stories about what had actually happened. The official record would show a textbook defense against superior forces. The unofficial record, shared over beers and poker games, would include details like Davis's mid-air robot assassination and Martinez's tank that looked like it had been assembled by enthusiastic toddlers with access to alien technology. Torres sat with his squad, fielding questions about the shovel incident for the 1,000th time. The story had grown in the telling. In some versions, he fought off 20 Krell. In others, he used the shovel to deflect plasma bolts. In his favorite version, which he neither confirmed nor denied, he had threatened to dig a hole and bury the entire invasion force if they didn't leave. "So what are you going to do if aliens invade again?" someone asked. Torres thought about it for exactly 1 second. Same thing I did this time. Grab my shovel and get to work. The table erupted in laughter, but underneath the humor was a truth that every human in that room understood. They were Marines. Fighting impossible odds with inadequate equipment was literally in the job description. And if the universe wanted to test them, well, they'd be ready, with shovels if necessary. Sergeant Kowalski watched her Marines from across the mess hall and allowed herself a rare smile. They had done the impossible. They had faced an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds and sent them running, not with advanced technology or superior numbers, but with the same qualities that had gotten humanity through 10,000 years of warfare: adaptability, creativity, and a fundamental refusal to accept defeat. The Krell had learned an important lesson. So would any other species that thought Earth looked like an easy target. Humanity didn't win wars because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. They won because they were too stubborn to quit and too crazy to realize when they were beaten. And sometimes, when the galaxy was very unlucky, they won because someone interrupted a Marine's work detail and made him really, really angry. The Krell Empire would recover from this defeat. They would rebuild their forces, conquer new worlds, and continue expanding across the galaxy, but they would do it in a different direction, away from the small blue planet where the primitives lived, the planet where soldiers carried shovels and considered them weapons, the planet that had proven, once and for all, that technological superiority meant nothing against opponents who didn't have the sense to be intimidated by it. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species would hear the story. Some would dismiss it as propaganda. Others would investigate and find the truth even more unbelievable than the legend. And a few, the smart ones, would mark Earth on their star charts with a simple warning. Here be humans. Proceed with extreme caution. Bring shields rated for kinetic weapons. Do not engage in ground combat. Do not threaten. Do not invade. And whatever you do, do not interrupt their digging. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not with advanced science or peaceful diplomacy, but with violence, improvisation, and an entrenching tool. The galaxy would have to adjust. Or they could try their luck invading Earth. But after the shovel incident, nobody was that stupid anymore. Well, almost nobody. In a distant sector, a Vorgon Warfleet commander was reviewing intelligence on potential conquest targets. He came across the Earth file, read the warnings, and clicked his mandibles in amusement. Primitives? Defeated the Krell with hand tools? Impossible. The Krell must have grown soft. Perhaps the Vorgon Empire should demonstrate how proper conquerors handle such worlds. His intelligence officer, who had read the full report including the classified sections, quietly began updating her resume. She had a feeling she would need a new job soon, preferably on a ship heading in literally any other direction. But that was a problem for another day. For now, Earth was safe. The Marines were victorious, and Private First Class Danny Torres had earned his place in history as the man who started an interstellar incident with a shovel. The galaxy would never be quite the same. And somewhere in a supply building at FOB Sandstorm, a box of entrenching tools sat waiting, just in case humanity needed to explain the concept of mess around and find out to another species. They were ready. They had shovels. Epilogue. 6 months later, the Vorgon War Fleet arrived at Earth orbit with 300 ships, confident and eager to prove the Krell were simply incompetent. They lasted 48 hours before requesting terms of surrender. The key factor in their defeat: humanity had mass-produced plasma-enhanced kinetic weapons and trained an entire division in Torres-style, close combat techniques with entrenching tools. The galaxy officially classified Earth as a Do Not Disturb zone. The shovel was inducted into the Smithsonian Hall of Military History, displayed with full honors beside medals and battle flags. Torres got a new shovel. It was exactly the same as the old one, but somehow it felt different. He went back to digging. After all, those latrines weren't going to build themselves.